And Emma, hand for you for an introduction.
Thank you, Cara. Yeah, I am so happy to welcome and introduce George Siemon. George was a founding member of Crop Cooperative, which is also known by its brand name Organic Valley. George served as the CEO of Organic Valley from its founding until about 3 years ago in 2019. And George, you and I haven't met in person, but I feel like I learned a lot about you. This past summer, I was the cooperative stewardship intern at Organic Valley, and I spent a lot of my time just learning and studying about the co-op's origins and how it came to be. So it's a personal pleasure to meet you here and now. So very briefly, a little bit about George, and you'll have to correct me, George, if I get any of these details wrong, but he started as a farmer in Vernon County in the late 70s. And this was a time of pretty big upheaval in the farming industry in the Midwest and across the country with the farm crisis of the 1980s. So this was a time when land prices were crashing, interest rates were skyrocketing, and the USDA was telling small family farmers across the country to get bigger, get out, even though oversupply was crushing the markets. So there was mixed messages, a lot of uncertainty. And during this time, really high rates of farmer suicide across farming states, and about 250,000 family farms closed permanently. So this was the backdrop of the founding of Crop and what was going on in the farmers' worlds. Crop started with just an idea to start a small regional organic cooperative to provide an economically and environmentally sound platform to keep local farmers in business. And George was at the helm of this idea from the very beginning. He not only represented the co-op and the idea externally to potential supporters and funders, but he was also a leader among his fellow farmers, guiding them towards this vision of doing something that hadn't been done before and inspiring them to band together for their own survival. So the history of this effort speaks for itself. The next 30 years, from the late 80s until today, Organic Valley has grown and grown and grown. Today, it's a $1 billion a year company that represents just about 2,000 family farmers across the country, some in Humboldt County, I believe. And throughout its lifetime, it has participated in defining the federal organic standards, worked to bring organic as a concept into the consciousness of consumers, and most importantly, through it all stayed rooted and headquartered in its place of origin, Vernon County, Wisconsin, and stayed true to its mission to help family farms, small organic family farms, survive and thrive. So again, George, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your time. I think it's not too difficult to draw the parallels between what you and other dairy farmers were up against in the late 80s to what cannabis farmers in California today are facing. So I think we're just really excited to hear about your experience and get a window into what you were thinking and feeling and what you did tangibly to overcome some of those challenges. So first and foremost, anything you want to add, any addendums to your background or the formation of Crop just in general?
No, I'll just do my check-in. As I said earlier, we have real seasons here in Wisconsin. And we're really having a beautiful sunny days now. The birds are back, and, all the birds leave, a lot of them leave and come back. So when you see them the first time, it really is enlightening and exciting. So I always like to, all the recognizing the native people. I've been studying the ancient people that are like 5 tribes back from the ones we're recognizing now. So I always feel a little bit like, okay, we're recognizing the recent ones, but what about the people 20,000 years ago, 50,000 years ago? So I'm actually studying them, and interesting enough, one of my aspects is I've been looking at psychedelics and the ancient people and trying to understand the relationship humans have to psychedelics. So I would be called a legacy grower in the definition you all have had. So I'm glad to be here and glad to participate. And uniquely, Organic Valley was an amazing story, an amazing success. Some things just are meant to happen when they happen, and they just have the right mix of people, the right timing. But it doesn't mean it's all easy or guaranteed. I think there was in Wisconsin, once we started, all of a sudden quite a few groups started up in the Midwest to start organic dairy. And we're the only one that survived. And we absorbed most of the other ones, not out of aggression, but out of compassion, you would say. So, it's really, we have to find a new form of capitalism, new form of business. We're just killed now by the present system. And farmers tend to be the last in line, at least they feel that way. And a co-op is a good thing to consider. Since I retired from Organic Valley, I have also been working on another form of ownership called trust ownership. And it's where you take away the valuation of the company and put it into a trust. And so it doesn't become the driving force, because in business, you have the value of your company and you have the annual sales that you worry about. The value is what really drives people bonkers. Their stock market goes down, their stock market goes up, all that stuff. And a trust ownership and hopefully a co-op ownership offers to get, it's not about the value of the company, it's about the mission of the company. Now, a co-op can be sold. It can quit. Everything can quit. So but its intent is not to be sold. Its intent is not to build value. Its intent is to serve its purpose. So you had written you'd like me to just answer questions, or would you like me to ramble on some here?
We have a couple of questions, and maybe that can loosely guide your rambling.
Okay.
First, just back to the beginning, wondering if you could walk us through how you actually went from conceiving of a cooperative to moving towards this goal.
Yeah.
Some
Well,
of those first concrete steps.
You said it well about the bankruptcies. The early 80s were just a terrible time. And what it did spawn was a great deal of activism. You had all kinds of groups spreading manure on the steps of the USDA and doing all these demonstrations, activism. Farm Aid got started. It was a real heady time, a lot of activism. We've got to do something. And that was all headed for the Farm Bill of 85. The Farm Bill came and nothing changed. There was no change whatsoever. Interest rate was up to 13%. The government was foreclosing on farms right and left. And it was just a hard time. So when somebody comes up with an idea, naturally there's a lot of interest in that of we need to do something. So the signature statement was the government's not going to do anything, so we've got to do something for ourselves. And so with that essence or spirit, that was where we got started. It also helps that Wisconsin is a huge co-op state. My phone company's a co-op, my electric company's a co-op, my LP gas person's a co-op, and and it was there wasn't a real negative attitude towards co-ops. Probably the farmers had the worst attitude about their dairy co-ops, that they weren't doing enough and that kind of thing. Farmers haven't felt always that co-ops have delivered. I think sometimes that's a little misjudged because they don't know how it'd be if they didn't have a co-op to balance the market forces, but still it's an honest enough concern. We also had the extra thing that's odd here. I live in the hills of Wisconsin, the driftless area. And oddly enough, this was a tobacco growing region. And tobacco was very community oriented, I never thought I'd grow tobacco. I thoroughly enjoyed growing tobacco. And it was kind of like just the community thing where everybody worked together, the neighbors and all that kind of thing. And the people who bought tobacco pulled out of our region and left everybody high and dry. So you had this, everybody was growing 2 acres of tobacco or 3 acres, and then all of a sudden there was no market. So then the idea of organic produce came in, and that's actually what our co-op started out as, is to transform tobacco farming into produce farming. Well, that's the first mistake to a certain degree. It's perfectly logical, but it's a whole nother thing to learn how to grow vegetables. And it's a whole nother thing to get a bunch of Norwegian bachelors to grow something new that were used to tobacco. So we started out as a tobacco co-op, was pretty dreamy eyed. But overall, the attitude was we didn't have anything to lose. We had to try because it was too bad. If we didn't do it, we know where we were at. It was the things were getting destroyed. So we started out with the produce. And again, it's really hard to bring a new agricultural system into an area. And it's much easier to work with people who know what they're already doing. You all know what you're doing on the legacy, on the crops growing. No one knew anything about produce. So we started out with a foolish idea, you would say. Early on, after 6 months or less, we started looking into organic dairy because the farmers we knew that were organic oriented were dairy farmers because dairy is a natural fit for organics. So then that was where we moved into dairy as another program. And dairy is the program that made it. Without dairy, we probably would have failed. Good idea, everything lined up, organic market was growing, tobacco farming was dying, co-op, all that, but still it would have been probably pretty long road. But we started off at dairy, and dairy did succeed. It was a brand new marketplace. We were pioneers. It makes a big difference to be pioneers, and it makes a big difference to have an undeveloped market, because as we get into the conversation here, you all now have market conditions that are bigger than you that you're wrestling with. We had the same thing in conventional dairy, but in organic dairy, we had a free shot to do it our way. So when we did the dairy, we just had the attitude that if we're going to do organic dairy and we're going to do all this different, and of course, paperwork and all that stuff, then we want to be paid a sustainable price. If you want me to be a sustainable farmer, then hello, I got to have sustainable income too. So we took a rigid stand on that. And because it was a brand new market, we were able to really do some miraculous things. Because at roots, the problem with agriculture is a lot about the market forces of supply and demand determine your price at the end of the day. Even if you can get a market premium from a brand or something, you're really just getting that from the brand, not necessarily always to the farmer, because the prices get so established by the market forces. So it's pretty tough going, but what we did was unique. And this is something that may not be in your world, it may not. We just decided that organic milk was worth X dollars. Either we sell it at that price or we'll sell it conventional. And so we took a hard line. There was no compromising. Either you give us our price or it's going to be sold conventional. And so by doing that, we actually established what the price of organic dairy was. And while we still today, 30 some years later, we still have market realities that want to push us around. Organic dairy overall has been a stable price and climbing price for 33 years. And it's largely because we took the attitude, hey, it's this price or not. But we were very lucky because we had a conventional dairy market. And we're also very lucky because organic is well fitted, not for dairy, because dairy needs diverse crops, rotation. Dairy produces manure, and dairy just sells water, really. So it was a pretty good thing for organics, and we learned a lot. We pioneered all the non-antibiotics and all that. So we took on quite a few attitudes early on. Some of these are your questions already. One attitude we took on is we could see that one of the reasons why co-ops fail is they get all hamstrung by all their facilities. We got all these plants, we got to make sure they pay. And so it almost let the farm, it felt like the farmer became second in line to the serving the bigger business and the frustration there. So we decided, and we didn't have a choice, to be a partnering enterprise. And so we hired everything done we could get done. We didn't buy a plant or any of the buildings. We just got by as best we could, and we hired everybody else to haul our milk or process their products. And so we avoided any risks. So many people go into these ventures with all starry eyes, everything's going to go perfect. And first thing they do is buy a big building, and it's just, it's a dangerous path. So we always said that you need to build a business, then build a building. So many people go the other way. So I think that's my good introduction. Or poor introduction, whichever.
I wonder if I might follow up on that, George, when you said that you made a choice early on with the other farmers with whom you became a co-op, that you would you would set a price, if I understand right, and that the supply chain would buy organic milk at a premium price, or else you would simply sell it through the conventional channels.
Yeah.
Was there already a supply chain for organic milk, or how did you find and develop that supply chain?
Well, so there was no other markets, individual farm, but really no other markets. So right away, again, we started out with produce, but right away we got, first off, a lot of people try to support us. So that's the good news. When you get a lot of support from your local people and diverse people and co-op developers, the state, everybody was like, go team, go. And that helps. It really helps to have that. But then we got a natural food distributor came to us and said, once they heard we were doing dairy, or we went to them, whatever it was. And so we started selling cheese to them on a private label basis. And so again, we make cheese, we get it in the right condition, and then we sell it to them. Of course, halfway through the start, they were only buying half of what we had. And of course, that's where the buyer comes back to you and says, well, if you lower your price, I could sell more. And we said, no, that's not what we're going to do. If we're going to go through all this, it needs to be that. So we were just fortunate to be at that jump point of being strong-willed, determined, stubborn, and we had this raw opportunity this that we had. But again, we hired someone to haul the milk. We hired someone to process the cheese. We hired someone to cut the cheese, or in the beginning, somebody else cut it. So we took on what you call maybe an inefficient supply chain, but not really when you consider what it would take. We couldn't buy all that stuff just for a startup. We had to leverage that. But there was another side of that was really good. In the long run, the dairy industry didn't know what to make of organics. And they really weren't going to make any stab in it, but all of a sudden here's an opportunity to process for somebody and they get paid. And all of a sudden they were a participant in the organic dairy world when they weren't even, they couldn't even say the difference between organic and generic, so to speak. They get confused, but by bringing them in, that befriended the dairy industry. Because one thing everybody in Wisconsin and other places was concerned about is they hated to see family farms going out. And so our motive was to save family farms. So even if they didn't like organic, which many people didn't, they could see it could save family farms. So we were on the good side of the fence. And since then we hired people to do our work. That was even better yet. So by leveraging their equipment, we minimize our risk and we're able to succeed. Organic Valley today has, I think, over 100 processors, including Humboldt Creamery, and a lot of one in California, Crystal, and all the way up and down the coast there and all over the country. So we have a huge network. So we built it slowly, but when we went into a new region, we just talked about what we could make, saw what processing plants were available, and tried to, and then went out and hired those people. And again, everybody was, especially once you can prove you pay your bills, we were able to get a lot of cooperation with the conventional world. That would be quite a trick to get organics to get conventional from conventional world. But again, we waved the flag about saving family farms, and that was the flag that got us in the door.
George, we have this question in the chat about attorney fees, and I wonder more broadly if you could talk about the initial financial risk that forming Crop was to the founding members, and what kind of support you got by way of funding, and what the major costs were in the very, very early days.
Well, we did get very limited grants. Rural development was just beginning then, so it wasn't like there was a huge amount of money. We got some money, and we got some free support from people to get started. Like I say, the co-op development people, there were some people that reached out to us and helped us. And then we did something very unique. We did it right away, and then we let it pause, and then we brought it back. And this was unique for us, but we started selling preferred stock. And that's kind of something really to do better when you're well established, but we had so much community support that we developed preferred stock. Preferred stock is just nothing but a glorified loan, but it comes on your books as equity, and you have to pay it back. We didn't raise that much money, but $15,000-$20,000 in the first few months, but it was just a way of people in the community. The mayor bought $1,000 of stocks, that, you know, the so-and-so bought 100. It was really a kind of a pitiful thing in the long run, but it really made a big difference. Fast forward 5 years later, we started selling preferred stock seriously. We were established then. It wasn't just a feel-good thing. It was people could see we were succeeding. And I think we have $50 million of preferred stock sold right now. And that has been what you call the ballast in our boat. It's been our friendly funding that we've had. It's still debt. You can't hide from that ever, but it's at least it's on our books as equity. And those are friendly investors. And we've had to shut it off. We could have sold more over the years, but it's still debt. So then we also had that at some point in time, the farmers had to invest. And to this day, we still have that. And you got to get involved in your working capital. Working capital is what it takes to keep afloat business. So let's, for example, it takes it if you want to deliver your product and you want to get paid before the co-op gets paid, which most farmers like to get paid yesterday. Then somebody, but you don't get paid for 60 days. Well, who's carrying that money for 60 days? You know, so you got to deal with that kind of floating money. So we came up with a formula of 5.5% of your annual income that people had to invest. We gave them time to do it. And that was purely based on the float. It wasn't based on what it took to pay labor or anything like that. Just your product coming in cost us this much on float. Now, the way to get around that, and it's just another form of financing, is farmers wait to get paid till you get your money. It's just a simple math. So, but we did start the 5.5% investment. One thing we did that was just showed our farmer was we also said the farmer would get paid interest on their dividend on their investment. In the long run, since I was part of it, I certainly understand why we did it. But if owners should only get paid a dividend if their dividends earned. Otherwise, you're just going to cut down the pay price so you get the money to pay the dividend. There's only so much money in the pot. And so once you're an owner, you should get money once money's made, not like some outsider who's not getting the benefit, who gets some guaranteed money. But to this date, Organic Valley is still paying 8% to their owner members on their equity money, and most people reinvest it. So it's kind of turned into a banking account and a little bit of favoritism to the owners. But startup is hard, late course volunteer labor. The other thing we did, going back to the partnership, because when we started a dairy, and this is important, and I don't think it's relevant to you all, but dairy is very complicated with a lot of legal issues. You need field people and lots of state licenses. And so we went to the most radical farm group in Wisconsin called National Farmers Organization and asked them if they would sponsor or start an organic dairy program, and they would be the backer and we would be the front people doing the work. Uniquely or magically, they said yes. And they funded us for the first 3 years of our life. And that gave us the legs to become independent. So partnering is a big part of our success. And like I say, it may not be relevant to your situation or not. There's a lot of help right now. I don't know about a lot of money, but there's a lot of help. You've got 3 people on the phone here that are working on co-op development. So there is people with experience now that are helping with some of the basic things. You know, in the long run, it grows up into a lot more issues. You know, to succeed is not easy. People always think success is, well, that's fun. Well, it is fun, but it's just as hard and dangerous as anything, because you over succeed and outrun your money and get in deep trouble. You know, you can get into fighting, as humans tend to do. and running dysfunctionality. So, you know, this is living life here, especially the human element is important, because a co-op to succeed takes the right support from the farmers and people. And sometimes I worry the co-op developers push ideas on farmers that really they weren't ready for. It has to be a farmer idea. It has to be driven by farmers, and the co-op developers, no offense to you all, have to be the ones that help and supplement it. Because if you don't have the drive from the farmers, you're not gonna, no sense going there. The other thing though about our co-op was interesting, because I was a classic black to the lander. We just had, you know, the Margaret Mead quote about the unique mix of people, committed group of people can do anything they set their mind to, or whatever. It's about diversity is what it's about. We had a really diverse group in the beginning. We had crusty this and long-haired hippies and all that stuff. And we all managed to get in the same circle and work forward. And that, if it had been all farmers or all alternative people, it wouldn't have been that way. It was the mix of people that really helped us succeed. And yeah, I was raised in a business family, so I certainly, the only thing I said when I left home was I'll never be a business person. And so naturally, because I was raised in business, I became the business leader, not without resistance.
George, you had mentioned that partnerships were very important in terms of being able to move successfully forward, and that even the conventional dairy industry you were able to partner with. I am curious to learn more about the relationships that you had, that Organic Valley had with competitors, and was there any pushback from corporate farming or from entrenched players?
Well, anytime you get near conventional agriculture products, you have to acknowledge there's a really deep shadow of corporate manipulation of the Monsantos and the John Deeres and the Cargills. In all ag policy is deeply, deeply manipulated. So we were just some kind of fringe that was going to flop. You know, they did try to stop the organic rules. They did a lot of that kind of thing. But we just had the organics had a halo of magic to it, and we had the right people. Evidently, they got it through Congress because they had somebody else wanted something else, and so the liberal side said, "We'll give you that if you give us this." Who knows how we got to there? But it was not easy to get it all the organics going. So pushback, not there's pushback, but you know they still saw us as fringe. Working with other people, now that's a better question, because we were struggling as a business. We weren't smart enough to have a retail brand, and we didn't have the money for it. We had one, we were struggling, but then we had a new company called Horizons, who is the #1 brand, or was the #1 brand. They're going through some difficulties now. A bunch of natural food industry experts who had a history, and they had money, and they were going to start a organic dairy company. And so we had to decide about selling to them or not. And we did decide to sell to them, because the organic dairy industry needed a surge in the arm, needed more people pushing up the hill versus us. It was just, we didn't have the resources or expertise. This is way when we were pretty young. And so that it really helped us in a lot of ways, because as they would say, Horizons people, a rising tide floats all ships, and there's certainly some truth to it. They came in with money and pushed the marketplace. Some would say we gave way too much, but we needed that flash in the pan. And so Horizon and other people that entered, we always have had a real cooperative relationship, real work together. In the front of the room, we'd box it out, marketplace, but behind the room, we drank beer and went to DC and tried to get the mess straightened out. So we really cooperated with our competitors, and overall, you know, I don't have any regrets about the cooperation with competitors. I think it's important.
Should
And
we?
we didn't agree on everything. They came out with the great big organic dairies. We disagreed strongly about that. We didn't agree about everything, but again, when you're as small as we were then and as big as opposition, you got to choose who you want to fight with.
I
I'm
want
not
to.
reading the chat room. Y'all, I'm not reading the chat room, so.
Yeah, I was just gonna say maybe we should leave some time for
But
general Q&A, and Drew has a
chat
hand.
room though about employees. I want to respond to one I see about workers, employees. Oh, for the farms. No, that's different than what I was going to say. You know, one of the problems with co-op is it still can be single stakeholders. It's all about the farmers. So you can have a co-op that's just as mean to employees as the man on the moon, you know, so because they're single stakeholders. So farmers, and I don't know, your marijuana growers are going to be these farmers, but farmers in the Midwest today are resisting things like social justice or animal welfare or environmentalism. Hey, organics all about no chemicals. What's with this social justice stuff? Well, it's called the consumer. Besides being the right thing, the consumer drives the ship. You know, if the consumer wants organics to have social justice, it then has to have that. So honestly, it was probably the most difficult thing the last 10 years is seeing the organic farmers who I felt were being treated well and had done well, resisting things like social justice or animal welfare, or, you know, they just like took the stand of, I don't want to be told how to farm. Well, in the long run, the consumer tells us all how to farm, you know, whether whichever form it comes into it, the consumer is the important thing, especially if you want a premium. So the key word in this day and age is multi-stakeholders. Oh, everybody's important. By the way, in the old days, they called it the golden rule. So it's not like we're just reinventing the wheel here, you know, so it is important. And the consumer, if you want to have be the elite brand or the go-to brand, you're going to have to satisfy the concerns they have for your employees, you know, all those things that it needs to be part of it. You can't just be one aspect. It's a very complex consumer out there who, and I've been disappointed by them. We see people leave organic dairy and go to plant-based beverages, which I'm fine with, except for guess what? They're going to conventional plant-based beverages, and I'm crazy. I'm like, what the heck? Now you're going to take a chemical plant, make artificial milk and drink that and think it's better than, or go to organic plant-based, no problem, that's your choice. But this business, so they got single-minded about what they're after. Plant-based, and forget organics. Well, that's not, that's disappointing to me. We need to be more complex, more holistic about our thinking. But the consumer has their own mind, and social justice is big right now, folks. Nobody's going to get away from it, you know. And it's also, if you want to be paid a fair price, then inevitably the question is, and therefore you're paying your help a fair price. And that's a harder question because there's lots of aspects to help. You know, it's not, you got kids, families, friends, people who need a place to stay, all that kind of stuff that happens too. But still, it's a holistic world where we hope we're going into.
Drew, what's your question for George?
My question?
Oh, I'm going to have Drew jump in with a question for you.
Okay.
Great. Thank you, George. Thanks so much for your time and all your wisdom and experience. Really appreciate you sharing this. It's a wealth of information here. I was the one who asked that question about labor, and I think just more broadly, what I'm hearing a lot from you is sort of how Organic Valley addressed the sales side of its farmers' products. And I'm wondering, did Organic Valley also address the lowering cost of production, the supply side of it for its farms, or was it really just hitting that price minimum on the sales side?
We largely did just the price side. You know, we were just trying to get a fair price. Farmers need to figure out now. We helped a lot where we could feed mills all over the country, and we tried to start a feed network, but mostly we did not get involved in supply management, like collectively buying, not supply management, supply co-op, where you collectively buy your seed together, your fertilizer together. And in part, that's because we became too complex of a co-op too fast. I mean, we were in Wisconsin for only 5 years before we moved to Minnesota. Then we leave to Oregon. Then all of a sudden it was Maine. I mean, it was crazy. So there was only so much we can do. That's the dream of the corporate world now. If they get involved in farmers, they'll make them better farmers, help them buy fertilizer cheaper, help them use less or use it more righteously and all that kind of stuff. So at the end of the day, we just figured out, we came with a target price, and I wanted that target price to be not a greedy, you know, I want it to be, I can look the consumer in the eye. This is what it takes to have a family farm, dairy farm, produce organically, and no ifs, ands, and buts. But, you know, humans want to get greedy. It's part of what you have to contend with. If you're successful, they'll want more, and then they'll want a little more. So that's always part of it. But that's something you all in your situation, you know, that might be something that really helps you is collective buying, purchasing. It might be something that you, or anything like that.
Great, Sequoia.
Yeah.
Oh, did you
Go
want to
ahead.
jump in
No.
with your questions, or I can go ahead and read them?
I can start to read here.
We're looking at the one.
Sure.
Yeah.
So
Hey, George. Yeah, I'm going to just ditto what Drew said about thank you for being here and offering your time and your wisdom and insight. It's amazing. And I was asking just some specifics about the branding when you were talking about your relationship with Horizon and how they came in and you worked together cooperatively. And my first question was, who actually owns the Organic Valley brand? Is it the co-op? And I guess it'd be interesting to hear some of how, like, how some of the funds, I guess, comes back into the co-op, or how you utilize that, or how it's paid back to the farmers. And then on the Horizon side of things, are they actually like buying product from from Organic Valley Farms and then doing their own thing with it? Are they licensing their brand? And is it still getting like packaged with maybe Organic Valley? You said that you guys actually partner with various processing facilities. You don't actually run the processing facilities. So I guess I was asking, does Horizon like utilize those same ones and have them just packaged and do the same thing, but with their branded packaging? Or if you can tell us just a little bit of how that works, that would be appreciated.
well, we started Horizons, and then as soon as they could leave us with their big dairies, they left us. So some can say, well, that was not too smart. I don't know that, because I would have to figure out what would happen if we hadn't done that, because we were struggling financially, we were struggling with branding, and we needed that surge. Now, Horizons is the classic example of what not to do in the sense of stability and sustainability. They bought all the competitors they could around us, and then they went and they get rid of those brands, but they were building a ship to go public with. They went public, the founders became millionaires, and they went down the road a while, and then they ended up selling Horizons out of the public market into Dean Foods, part of White Wave. And then they were able to extract themselves out of that sooner or later. No, that was wrong. Then Dean Foods, White Wave, and then they sold it to Danone. So it just went down the normal ownership route of valuations, what matters. And Horizons now is struggling because organic dairy is a tough business. It's not high profits, it's a tough business. And they just dropped over 80 farmers. I heard it was 180, but I haven't got the right number. They cut them off because they're just going to bigger and bigger farms all around the country. Today, and for 25 years, has been none of our milk on Horizons product. So, but they buy milk from anybody that it qualifies as organic. But they, you know, when you look at the marketplace, a 40 cow farm is not as efficient to pick up as a 400 cow farm. You know, so it just, the market forces drive you there. Organic Valley's always had the disadvantage of servicing small farmers. They get paid around $30 a hundredweight just to be throw a number out there. It costs us $1 a hundredweight to have small farms, maybe $2. So it boils down to a handicap. But guess what? We didn't have any corporate owners that were after big money. I certainly, as a CEO, wasn't paid the big money that the other CEOs were paid. So inevitably, that $1 or $2 was a brand asset, an asset that the co-op could use and still compete with Horizon. So in the long run, today Horizons is backing away from organic dairy, believe it or not, because it can't hit the profit goal that Dannon wants. And lo and behold, they're backing away, and who's benefiting? Organic Valley Crop is now getting a lot more business as that happens. So for 35 years, we've said it was the old tortoise and hare situation. We were the turtle plodding along, and they were the hare, and we just kept plodding. And
so does the co-op like purchase all the branded packaging and then put Organic Valley Farms product into that packaging and then sell that product, and they obviously have to replenish the fund for new packaging, and then they pay the farmers? Or are they like, they're not purchasing it up front, right? Other than maybe an initial deposit or something? Or I'm always trying to understand the economics of it and how it actually flows.
Two things. The processors, of course, once you get established, the processors are responsible for all the packaging needs. That's what they do for everybody else. They have the packaging on hand. When you buy a carton of milk that they bottled in, there's a carton cost. So that was a nice thing that was traditional in the dairy world.
There's like standardized packaging too, right?
Well, no, it was all it was standardized half-gallon jug, but it was our label. So yes, Organic Valley is owned by Crop Cooperative 100% solely. What we did though was, again, and they've wandered from this. We just established a price for farmers, and what that meant was, and because I said it earlier, if we want this price for organic milk, we don't want to compromise that. But that doesn't mean the farmer got paid that price, because you might have had where 80% of the milk was sold at the organic price and 20% wasn't. We still were maintaining the price, but the farmer was carrying the utilization. That's what the owners contributed. And they contributed that because there was a hope we'd grow to 90 and to 80 and 95. There was a hope for the future. So the farmers in the first 20 years did have to be realize that utilization was part of the basis for determining their pay price. After 20 years, it started to be, we knew we were doing enough and we could absorb a little this and absorb a little that if it didn't go right. If we made too much money, then we give to the farmers at the end of the year. So we just always bet on our record of what the utilization would be. But again, if we hadn't done that, we would have never been able to maintain the price, because in farming, as you all know, getting paid $10 one week and 15 the next week and back to 7 the week after that is enough to not want to be part of farming. It's an insult. And so we were close to stability was very important to our farmers, and we got stability and we got profitable.
Did you say that the IP or brand is actually owned by a secondary company, not Organic Valley?
No, just purely Organic Valley Crop Cooperative.
Crop Cooperative is the cooperative name, and Organic Valley is the brand name, like the public facing name.
Okay.
Now, having said that, and at the maturity now, 33 years and $1 billion, it is a challenge whether a farmer board can be 100% the business board of running $1 billion company. There is a challenge there. We shouldn't be too arrogant here. And there are some stories, believe it or not. Welch's grape juice is a unique example. Welch's was a privately owned brand, was buying, and they helped start a co-op called National Grape. And they went down the road, and when the founder of Welch's died, he left Welch's to the co-op grape co-op under the condition that it would have its own business board with farmers on it, but not that the farmers would be 100% owners of it. So farmer co-ops have had trouble managing businesses, and because they get a little big-headed sometimes, and they want to run the business the way their farms run. They want people to have the same work ethic as a farmer has. And I can say there's issues that happen out there. That so got to be a little cautious there to think that a farmer co-op can't get in over their head and has to be careful. Humboldt Creamery in your neighborhood was a farmer co-op that unfortunately went through a bad time period. I'm not saying the farmers are to blame or not, but co-ops can go through management difficulties. And so I personally am concerned that you get to a certain level where you shouldn't have more business people involved in the management board, as long as they're clear about the purpose, which the purpose is obvious, and make it better for farmers. That's the whole purpose. So a business is it's hard to succeed too. I'll just say that.
I'm wondering if, as we're getting close to the end here, if perhaps especially those that haven't yet had a chance to ask questions, please do feel free to put your question in the chat or to raise your hand.
And we have a question from Mary here that actually might apply more to our next group meeting, because I think it's speaking specifically to the cannabis situation that, you know, we're coming through the distributors, we're having a lack of retail outlets. And I think thinking of our cannabis, like maybe if we think of like conventional and organic, where the outdoor sun grown is really our organic angle, and what we're dealing with a lot is conventional or corporate weed, as we often call it. We have a marketing issue that people right now don't actually seem to care. and that's, you know, something that y'all overcame at the time, that maybe people weren't as knowledgeable, but there was a hunger for it. And we keep running into a challenge with that, quite frankly, with our cannabis consumers. So that's a nut that we're looking to crack.
Yeah. And the next question is about consumer education. I'm looking at the chat. So first off, it's the only answer in a lot of ways is to build value and get people to appreciate the value. Overall, consumers are hard to educate and they get single-minded, and you've got a product, since I was recently in an Oregon shop, amazed at the legalization, not much branding there. You know, mostly it's variety names that are zany, that seems to be driving the marketplace. So the question is, how do you make the retailers at least partially supportive is the big question, and what are their needs that you might be able to satisfy? You gotta buy. Retailers are not friendly always. They're a tough group, you know, so you got to figure out how you can answer some need of theirs. And I don't know what that is in your trade, you know, but the retailers are obviously have to be a partnership now. And I know the whole marijuana culture of the West Coast is disillusioned right now. What was a very positive and hopeful has turned into rather corporate weed, even gang weed. You know, a friend of mine's involved in the business in Oregon, he was telling me about it, and he said it was just simply disillusioning, you know. So it's a tough call with that, but retail relations is you're not going to be able to afford to build your own retail stores, you know, very easily. So how do you find a place there? Because inevitably the retail store is going to start consolidating. I was in Denver and saw there was quite a few chains of retail stores. I don't know how that is in California. Those retail stores, those chains, they like to brag about how they support the good guys. Sooner or later, they get to that scale where they like their partnership. And so you do have to find partnerships with your retailers, but you got to be willing to take some abuse from them, because that's how buyers treat sellers. They abuse them, you know. It's just it's something that's very tough to get used to. It doesn't feel fair, but it's pretty well the way it is. They'll yell at you.
All right, Mika. Oh,
Not to be too discouraging there,
yeah.
But you got to face the reality.
We're there. We're in it. Our farmers are in it. Yeah. Mika, you have your hand up, and I think that will bring us pretty close to our time together.
Hey guys, George, thank you so much for sharing. This is so useful. I love the preferred stock. And I guess maybe the rest of the group knows this. My first question is, are you going to be available again to help us? Because what you did is awesome. And I would love to be able to have you answer more questions. And then secondly, back to the lawyer question is, right now our last meeting we were kind of in the weeds about setting up our business structure, and how much of, the beginning part of you setting up your co-op was focusing on kind of the weeds of setting up the business structure and legal fees associated with doing that. And because that feels like the biggest hurdle right now. And does that feel appropriate?
Well, first off, am I available? Yeah, I'm available. I'm enjoying being an advisor. Haven't been paid ever since I retired. Anybody ask me, I'm available. But I also amazed how I was always a hopeless optimist, and now I'm the kind of the realist doubter or something. So it's a little bit of a because I don't, it's hard to succeed. It's hard to do things sometimes, and kind of the grains against us in a lot of ways, trying to do good. So I'd be glad to participate more along the way. The most important thing is for you all know what you want, know what your need is, and know what you can accomplish. It might be helping with supplies is a good way to start. Might be you need an association with all the other growers in the state to take care of your legal issues. I've read through your show. So, what's the starting point, and where do you can have an ultimate goal, but how do you start and succeed and have the winning structure? But we did not spend a lot of money on legal fees when we started. As you say that, we had somebody that was a friendly co-op developer and he led us through bylaws, and certainly articles of incorporation didn't cost that much. So I really can't say there was a lot of legal fees in our beginning era, because it's just not that hard to file incorporations and to deal with bylaws. You can get any Organic Valley will share their bylaws with you, or somebody will, that kind of thing. And so that part, and lawyer fees, there's a place for lawyers, but there's a place for consultants. But you should always know what you want before you go to them. If you go to them with a half question, they'll charge you 3 or 4 times as much. You go there knowing what you want, and you're clear about it, and tell them what to do, then you'll get further. So, yeah.
That's really good advice.
No offense to you consultants out there. But...
Great. Well, yeah, thank you so much. I think Blaze, you had a question there in the chat, and I see your hand up. You want to jump in and we'll come on?
Yeah, just my question in the chat, whether I didn't understand whether it was a worker-owned cooperative, and how if the workers were treated better than conventional workers.
I will tell you that I had a partner who was an astrologer and quite a brilliant man. That was my partner one of my friends, and he always advocated that we should have employees be part of the co-op and owners. I felt like the employees had so much say that I viewed the farmers as the conscious, and so to speak. I regret that now. The new age is multi-stakeholder. Everybody has to be part of it. I wish we had brought the employees in to be owner members. I don't like the word owners, by the way. The word owners is just the old structure, because owners means you can turn around and sell it. A member means you're part of something you want to last. You want to hand down to generations. If you go in to start a co-op and in 20 years you say, hey, I've been part of it, now I want, my 50th part of the value of the company we built as an owner, then you're just going to take that and burden the future generations with it. So owner is tough, but I wish the employees had been members in the long run. I regret that I didn't do it, but that was 1988, 90. You know, the idea of that was in the farmer community would have been way out there, but today it's not way out there. Multi-stakeholders is what has to happen in our society, and we have to get over the owner rules, and the owner's the winner. And I did all I could to make the employees valued. I can't say that we overpaid, but benefits, we made it like a family affair as much as, of course, I was CEO, so I had a lot to say about that. So I did all I to make it a lovely place to work. And it's now turned quite corporate because it's got older and I'm no longer CEO. That doesn't mean the employees are mistreated. It just means it's turning quite corporate, which might be the price of success. As they said in the introduction, 2,000 farm families and 1,000 employees is a lot of responsibility. And the 2,000 farmers have really benefited from the co-op, and that's a prideful thing. But I think during my tenure, I would say I had 3 times where the farmer board got unruly and were trying to do things that were not in line with what I felt. And it wasn't just me, they just, you know, ownership gives you this hierarchical gene that gives you a little dictatorial gene that pretty soon gets to be self-centered. And so you can't hide from the human dynamics of co-op or any human interchange. It's the challenge we have in our society right now. We're failing at it everywhere as you look, if you haven't noticed. And it's a really tough issue, and it can happen in co-ops. And certainly those of us that were in the 60s and 70s saw a lot of good ideas that could have worked if the human factor was better handled in some way.
And maybe as a closing there, that's such a beautiful setup for what do you feel, what did you learn, or how did you and overcome those and survive those unruly periods, or actually, you know, manage to keep this many people cooperating given all the challenges of human nature?
Yeah. Again, the multi-stakeholders, the real answer. Everybody needs to be part of it. You get a group of any single groups, employees or farmers or whatever you want, in a room with the door closed, they can all get a little strange about their self-interest. If you get them all in the same room together, you can't be as unruly as I use that word just now. So having that checks and balances helps. So I don't know what the right structure is for you all. I've moved on a little bit to trust ownership, because I see one of the things that I saw in the natural food trade was you saw all these brands that many of you all bought for a long time get bought up by corporate interests. And they just went to heck, just went bad. It was terrible how it all worked out. A lot of good, heartfelt businesses that got bought out that became just foreign to what they started out with. So they could have been sold the business to a trust and left it in the hands of the future instead of some corporate need. And there wasn't another vehicle to go to. And a trust is something of interest to me. I'm involved with Organically Grown Co-op. It's not co-op. Organically Grown is an organic distributor pioneer in Oregon. And they've now gone from originally a farmer co-op, then they went to employee ownership, and now they've gone to a trust ownership. And so they're now buying themselves back from the original owners, and they are going to now be free of the valuation and the ownership, and to run just for purpose. So Purpose Trust is a new movement. It's an old movement. Welch is great, Hershey's chocolate, lots of European companies are trust ownership. So I'm now looking at that myself. And but that so far seems very effective for existing companies to sell to versus startup like you all. I think it's real important to get the right mix of people together, and you know that's the most important thing, is to have the need and the ability, learning to work together.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, George. I know this is huge for us. We're facing so many of the similar challenges and just wanting to support our small family farms, to keep them in business, to keep our farmers on the land doing what they love and creating an exceptional product that really does stand out from the competition, and yet really struggling to evolve, quickly in this fast changing, over-regulated market, especially here in California. So it's a breath of fresh air. Appreciate both your optimism and your pessimism. I think we need an equal dose of both. And we look forward to, reaching out and seeing how we might continue the conversation with you, maybe more into the trust side where you're expanding. Because I know at least a couple of us co-op developers here would be really fascinated with what you're seeing as the evolution in that direction. And there might be a few more nitty gritty questions that you could bat out of the park. So thank you again for taking the time.
Let me make two last comments. First off, I always love when we started Farmers Up to Humboldt, I always loved your region. And as far as branding goes, Humboldt and Emerald Triangle is a great branding vehicle. You've got a great platform to go from there. Because I think, and then with adding that with the corporate gang type marijuana trade, I think, there's definitely a branding opportunity there to pursue. And the fact that the regulations are onerous means that it's onerous for everybody. So how do you get, usually when people do regulations and they're onerous, there's a chance to go back after 3 or 4 years and say, this is insane. So what is the vehicle to consider that? Because if it's not working, it's not working. Now there's a point in time where regulations are regulations, but if they're really stupid, then that's something I was reading in your memo that you can't take it from one room to the next without a bill of ladings or something crazy. That's just obviously somebody's. You should be able to get those. You should at least be optimistic you can unify and do that with a bigger group. At least try, because there's no way are you kidding? Write a marijuana bill and get it right the first time? No, they have to go back. Okay, happy days. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, George. Thanks, everybody.
George.
Thank you.
Thank you so
My
much,
pleasure, you
George.
guys.
Great
Yeah.
afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yay.
Oh, we're